Hello everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. I hope you are well today. Today we're going to be revisiting and correcting 10 stereotypes about INFJs. When I say that we're going to correct them, I mean that for some of them we might debunk them, we might reveal that they are after all fabrications or completely mythological. We know that it's very tempting and very trendy for the online community to kind of put INFJs on a pedestal and idealize them. But in some other cases, it could be the case that those stereotypes are pretty much very close to the truth and maybe just require a small clarification. So we're going to take 10 of them and then see what happens. And I'm curious to know what you think. So let me know in the comments too. Before I move on, just remember that I've written the book, The Ecstatic Soul and the INFJ. You can check it out on Amazon. It has lots of reviews if you want to make up your mind. And my new novel, The Infinite Castle, which is also a very nice product. And rumor has it that the main character is an INFJ. I will say no more. You can also follow me on Patreon. The links are below. Always appreciate your support. Deeply appreciate it, I should say. Okay, so maybe let's just crack on, shall we? We'll start with the first stereotype. INFJs see the future. Stereotype number 1 out of 10. Should it be corrected? Yes. Does it make any sense? Yes. But it has to be seriously corrected, 90% corrected. It's not that INFJ sees the future because nobody sees the future, okay? INFJs relate to the future in a way that is peculiar to them and to INTJs because of NI dominance and SE inferior. And this transpires in some sense in a way that the future for an INFJ is something that they deeply feel committed to. They are invested in knowing what's going to be happening in the future, but often it's not just that they're invested in what's going to happen in the future, but how it's going to link to the past. INFJs are, through NI dominance, are really focused on the constancy beneath the changes wrought by time. Okay, so they're concerned about the continuity between future and past, and that meets in the present in the INFJ's consciousness, right? Which is why you can have INFJs that are more conservative leaning, and you can also have INFJs that are very future oriented in the ordinary sense. Second stereotype: they understand others better than they understand themselves. I think in some ways this is, again, containing a grain of truth, but it's obviously not completely true. It's a stereotype because there's also lots of ways from which no one understands you better than you do. So INFJs, that applies to them too. But it is true that they often tend to make sense of their feelings through having them echoed by other people and having, using more or less unconsciously most of the time others as a sounding board. Okay. Third stereotype: as a J-type, they are very organized. I think this is mostly just false, in the sense that really INFJs, if you think about it in Jungian terms, they're not actually a J-type. They're a perception dominant type. They're an NI type. So being very organized is not really their priority. What is true is that they're not chaotic. It would be very unusual to meet a chaotic INFJ unless it's a very unhealthy INFJ perhaps, or a very stressed INFJ who might be in the grip, and then if SE sort of takes an unhealthy dominant control, there might be chaos. But the more chaotic types really tend to be the PE dominance, whether the SE dominance or any dominance. But after that come the PI dominant types. Okay. Fourth stereotype: they're a bit weird. I think that's a true stereotype. I don't think that necessarily that means that they are weird in an unattractive sense or in a repelling sense. INFJs have this weird combination between, in some ways, coming across as classical in a lot of their personality traits, and this relates to another stereotype about being old souls, which we'll return to in a moment. But they have both this kind of this benevolent classical vibe mixed with a bit of a strange otherworldly vibe, which is really unique to them. If you want a reference, which is a bit weird and you probably would not expect this from me, there's a show called Love is Blind, which is a kind of very interesting concept of, reality TV show about people. It's available on Netflix. People kind of get to know each other without seeing each other and propose to each other, and then have to learn to kind of, live together. And they have about 3 weeks to get married or not get married. From a sociological and psychological perspective, I find this show very interesting. In the current season, which is I think the fourth season, one of the main guys in there is called Zach, and I think he perfectly embodies this idea of like an INFJ, very clear INFJ man, but who has this kind of strangeness. And unfortunately, because the others are very much in the not strange, very normal category, they tend to see him as goofy and as a weird O, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's part of the show, I guess. Stereotype 5. They are famous for the INFJ door slam, or the door slam in general. Now, I think this stereotype is false in the sense that, of course, INFJs are capable of door slamming people. And I used to think, some videos will give indication of this, that the door slam was a real thing in the sense of a real INFJ thing. And I think that the door slam is a occasional INFJ thing, but it can also be the case of anyone who is in some sense willing to give people the benefit of the doubt and to work on something until they've had too much, and they just need to break off everything suddenly. Now, that often happens when you're in a relationship or in a friendship with someone who's not very perceptive, and so may not have seen the signs that were too subtle for them. Perhaps the INFJ might have thought that they were, visible enough. But I think that can happen with INFPs. I think it's probably more likely to happen with feeler types, but not even necessarily. More likely to happen with introverts, but it's not an INFJ specific thing. I don't think that anymore. Stereotype number 6. They are not made for this world. What I dislike about this stereotype is its extremity. It's a bit bombastic, and it's like, okay, you're in this world, you might as well try to figure out how you can be in this world. However, do they start with a disadvantage as compared to a lot of other types, perhaps types that are closer to the principle of reality, by having notoriously a better extroverted perception, and if not, like as a second best extroverted judgment in the form of extroverted thinking? Yes. So in some sense, INFJs are probably thrived better and had a higher status in general in earlier times, which has led me to release a video called Are INFJs the Oldest Types? Check it out, if you want to hear a bit more of a development on this. Stereotype number 7. We're getting closer to the end. They are wise beyond their years. I'd say actually that stereotype is mostly true. Stereotypes are generalizations. Generalizations are always a little bit dodgy at the margins. You're always going to have outliers. You're always going to have individual examples of particularly immature, unhealthy INFJs, and these will not be wise beyond their years. Let us not lie to ourselves. These exist both among male INFJs and among female INFJs, and I'm sure among non-binary INFJs. That's true. However, among most of the types, where you're the most likely to meet someone who just seems like they have the maturity of a 28-year-old when they're 20, or of a 35-year-old when they're 25, I've just noticed that it tends to be quite common with INFJs. And there's probably lots of reasons for that. At the moment, I will just content myself with saying this is something that I've noticed. So, if you think, okay, who is smart beyond their years, it might be more like an INTP, or at least the stereotype of an INTP or an INTJ. Can be true of INFJs, of course, but wise beyond their years, INFJs. Responsible beyond their years, I probably would put like a J lead, you know, like an ENFJ or an ENTJ, for instance. So, you know, to every type, they are beyond their years at some level. I'm sure there's a way of finding that out. Stereotype number 8, they dislike socializing. I think that stereotype is very false and, in fact, pernicious. I think this is one of those self-validating limitations that INFJs, particularly online INFJs, impose on themselves when they tend to be shy and they look for the INFJ descriptions that would give a justification for them remaining within this mode and not trying to reach out to others. INFJs will always try to socialize. They are not very self-contained. So even for those who are online, they will always try to socialize. This is in relation to FE, this is in relation to the tribe, this is in relation to understanding yourself through the echo of others. Like I was saying in an earlier stereotype, INFJs tend to enjoy socializing on their terms. They're introverts after all. Stereotype number 9, they have a tendency to mentor others. I think this is 50-50, true and false. There's a lot of INFJs that will tend to naturally enter into a mentoring relationship with others, but some INFJs will tend to be oblivious to that, to be quite honest. I think that the quintessential mentoring type is the ENFJ. Maybe that will not surprise you. And my observation and prediction is that the more an INFJ has FE well integrated and really well articulated and using it harmoniously and often, the more likely they will be mentoring in their terms. Less proactively than an ENFJ for sure, and perhaps along slightly more high-level intellectual lines, but it can certainly happen. And finally, the last stereotype that I want to talk about is they are hard on the outside, soft on the inside. I would say, very broadly speaking, that is the true stereotype. However, I would downplay how hard on the outside INFJs are. You know, INFJs, I think they're much more likely to look serious and a little bit schoolboy or schoolgirl-ish, but you know, formal and serious, maybe more so serious than formal, to be honest, because they can have this weird vibe that tends to offset the formality, but serious. And you know, you're not likely to kind of run into an INFJ and think, oh my god, that person is like, comes across like they're a lot of absolute fun, or they're just kind of crazy. They tend to, you know, they would come out of their shell after a while, but they can come across a bit serious. So not so much hard, but serious. And not so much soft, but playful. They are serious on the outside, playful on the inside. Are they soft in the sense of, you know, being empathic and caring about others? Yes, but does that come in the way of making hard decisions? No, you know, wisdom sometimes requires that. Let me know in the comments what you think and some other stereotypes that I did not include, and how you would like to correct them. You know, tell us whether you agree with them, whether you disagree, whether they're in between, and what your corrective would be. And don't forget my Patreon page. I'll see you next week. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.